Hello and welcome back to another tutorial here with me, Natalie Porter, Immaculate Confections. This is another one about colour. You may have seen our first video about colour where we were looking at how to mix up paste colours to create pretty much any colour. Today is all about dusting. Petal dusts are my absolute favourite thing, as you will see in this very enthusiastic tutorial you're about to watch. All of our colours are available on our website, immaculateconfections.co.uk. Let us know in the comments if you have any questions, and if you'd like to learn more about colour, we've got the little book of colour which I wrote quite a few years ago now, which is, as suggested, all about colour. So various different greens that we can do various different things with. So I'm going to take these, but I'm also going to bring in some teal and some eucalyptus blue there.
Even though the eucalyptus is more of a blue.
It depends on the breed of eucalyptus is the thing. So in fact, let me start with this one just because I do also like the olive green. So the obvious and first thing that we can always do with our colours, dirty brushes, is basically to match them. And the olive green gel and the tangy green dust are always a gorgeous combination. So you can see if I do the half there, very, very similar colour, and it just accentuates it, which is why I will pretty much, apart from if I'm making white flowers where often I will just leave them completely white, I will almost always be using some dusts because it does just give it a bump in terms of the colour and all the rest of it. For this one, if we think back to our colour wheel, let me grab the thing. Here we are. So these are, last time we spoke about colours when they're mixed across the wheel, so when you're taking a little bit of something opposite and mixing it in, and it will mute it and give you those muddy tones and stuff. And certainly both the tangy green, leaf green fall into that category. But you can see that the leaf green is sort of a darker version of the tangy green. It's the next logical step down. So we can start to layer like that and create that lovely sort of gradient across the two. We can of course go the other way up into the yellows as well. So we're using all those neighbouring colours, which again, so sorry. If you wanted to make this, again, olive green base, really bright, we can pop on some yellow. And of course, it doesn't make the leaf yellow necessarily, but what it does is it will accentuate the yellow tones that we've already got in that olive green. And you can see, make it tangier, for want of a better word, which if we were doing that and then we wanted something to tone it with, then that is where, for example, your yellow ochre would come in. Because again, it's that slightly muddy colour that we can bring a little bit in around the edge. So say if you were wanting to make like a autumn leaves that were on the turn from something that's very yellow, which some are, like ginkgo goes properly yellow and birch goes very yellow, then layering a starting point of a green with then some yellow and then that yellow ochre that's sort of neither yellow nor brown, it's in between on top, you kind of end up with a yellowy colour that is less yellow and more natural leaf looking than if you started with a yellow leaf, if that makes sense. So that's sort of doing a nice muddy khaki side of things. This one was our green, so just green, straight down the middle green.
Just a little bit of it?
Which just, yeah, a sort of medium amount, which is quite nicely suited to some lime green. So you can see there that the lime is not a mixed across the wheel colour. It is pretty much a pure tone that doesn't have anything muddying it, which again, if you want very bright, so say if we were going for, oh, I'm so sorry, again, no, it's okay, like spring, bright spring colours, so sort of first daffodils of the year and so on, then that lime on top of the green is beautiful, which if we wanted to, you could tone down again with just a little touch of that leaf green around the edge, because mixing that, having that lime there sort of takes away the muddiness of the leaf green, let's say, and you can end up with a rather nice little bit of shading on the edge there. And then for these ones, eucalyptus, you can have quite some fun there, because that's the eucalyptus blue, and this one is the eucalyptus green. And the point with those is that they're both those sort of muted tones, which we can have a little bit of the bluey tone on the one side there. I'm going to run out of bits of clean paper. Or indeed, the more greeny eucalyptus tone. And as you can see, they both sit really nicely on top of that eucalyptus base there. And then with that, again, you can play with it, and it's all about those sort of neighbouring and toning colours. So we could have, if you wanted to sort of dirty it, a little bit of the yellow ochre there, say, or indeed you could try some forest green, which, as you can see, it's a deeper green, but it's still a fairly soft colour. And certainly that there is the deep green, so you can kind of see the difference there, that it's still fairly soft. And that makes for a lovely, slightly darker edge, just to tone it a little bit. So that's sort of your greens leaning onto that kind of dusky side of things. If you were wanting something sagey, so then these two, this is ridiculous. This whole thing is going to be like this, isn't it? So these two here both came from our leaf green paste. This darker one, paler one even, lends itself beautifully. It is that green leaning eucalyptus tone. So we can have some of that. And again, if you want to keep things dusky, go for those more muted colours. So that's your forest green and your eucalyptus green. Which again, if we want to make this a bit darker with the forest green there, that tones gorgeously, as opposed to with our dark green, which is, as you can see, a much richer colour. So if I pop that on that side, and it all depends on what is the look you're going for, but you can see hopefully across those two there. Shall I actually hold it up? There we go. The sort of more muted tones of using that forest green, or indeed the deeper tones with the deep green there. And then on this last one, so this is a dark one, so say we wanted a nice deep ruscus or something, this here is going to be one where we'll do what I always describe as letting the dust do the work. So I've used my leaf green, I haven't oversaturated the colour, and you can see it's not super dark, but we can use our dusts to make it darker. So I shall use the deep green, and you can see that on top there, just going all over, you can just create a really deep, lush, rich tone. With that as well, if you wanted a brighter but still very natural, then your leaf green can work beautifully on top as well. Like so, you can see the sort of two halves of that. And then the last thing to say here, of course, is that even with our dust, we can still do a little bit of mixing across the wheel. So for example, let me take some burgundy. So that is a red tone, so we're working with greens, and I'm taking something that's from the opposite side of the wheel there. And we can use a little bit of something from across the wheel, blending on those edges. And can you see it just gives us that darker tone? And to be honest, this one's pretty dark. So it's not showing up tremendously. But if I were to do it with this one, you will very much be able to see. And it's those sort of leaves will often start to die and go a little bit crispy, right? So it kind of gives you that effect, and you kind of land at a brown place, but a brown place that is so much richer and more interesting looking, because you've made brown by mixing those colours across the wheel, by combining greens and reds, than just using brown. The thing that we've been doing here that I hope you can see, and what most of this will be, it just looks like a mess now, doesn't it? Is all those neighbouring colours is always the thing. It's going, right, where is my sample on the wheel? Sort of here-ish. Okay, so because of that, we can go green leaning or we can go blue leaning. And then adding that bit of yellow if you want for tone. Similarly here, we've got this sort of mixed across the wheel limey olive type colour, which, I'll put it that way round, we can go green leaning or we can go yellow leaning, and then we've added that bit of burgundy to mix across the wheel. So it's all the same principles, and more often than not, it's a case of finding the neighbours and then tweaking according to what you want. So what I'm going to do, so these are, in fact, I'm going to do pink and purple together. So these have all come from our magenta and our purple colouring. So again, literally a little bit or a lot of colour, or in George's case, an awful lot of colour. And the reason I've used them together is because they're neighbours, which means that we can use some pinks on our purples and we can use some purples on our pinks. And then, of course, we can also go further around and we can use some blues on our purples and use some oranges on our pinks. So it's thinking about all of those things. Where have my brushes gone? So the most obvious place to start here. So this is pure purple. This is one of the non-toxic, non-edible ones. But of course that's grand for sugar flowers. Most obvious place to start here is doing just a little bit to tone the edge. And in terms of technique, the most important thing you can do with your dusting, and I say this all the time, first rule, you can always add more, but you can't take it away. So add it a little bit at a time. You can build it further up, but if you've over dusted and put on too much colour, there's virtually nothing that you can do about it. Second thing is those small repetitive brush strokes, because it is the repetition that blends it. So instead of having, so let me go in with too much, I'll do it at this bit here. I'm going to have to do it. It's really hard to do because the muscle memory is so strong, right? But if I've got too much dust and I'm not blending it, you get this almost harsh line. Whereas what we want is a little bit of dust and that just super repetitive. Like so, because it means you're going to draw the colour in nice and slowly. So darker colour on a paler colour always works a treat. We can do, kind of like we did with the green, the very bright purple dust onto our deeper purple petal there, which will make it, as you can see, just extra purple. And actually the one thing I didn't do that I meant to do, let's see if I can find something, was make a couple of white ones. Just to show you, hang on, oh it is white. God knows how old this is, but anyway, an oak leaf. It's not quite white, it's almost white. It's going to make the point, which is just that sometimes for some colours what you might want to look at doing, oh that's very old, it just broke.
That's the best.
Is doing plenty of dust on the white. So as I said, that's our pure purple dust there, and you can see it looks quite different per what the underneath colour is. So that is always something to consider as well. And like I said, it's part of what makes flowers and cake decorating fun, is that you have this dual
like dual canvas.
Yeah, double opportunity for adding colour. What I can do with this one now, so indigo purple, which as you can see is really deep rich colour, and some navy there, which we can use to even further enrich around this. And then little tiny touch of navy, because like we said, remember your colour wheel, your navies and your blues and everything are next to the purple. So you can just end up, it just so deep and rich. So that's the one way with these. The other thing we can do as well, which is another technique I like, if you want effectively a lighter colour, you can mix it with some cornflower. So this is just cornflower, and I'm just going to mix that in with some of that purple there. You can see it's taken the blue off the brush as well. What the cornflower does, it's not pigment, so for all that it looks white, it isn't actually white pigment. So it's not going to make your colour whiter, but it will dilute it, is the word I always use. So much like mixing more water in with a watercolour paint or something like that. And it just means that you get even more control, because if you're picking a blob of colour up, it's maybe now it's 50% cornflower and 50% pigment, so you're putting on that much less, and we can just touch the edges, and you can see what a subtle little bit it is that you can put on there. So the cornflower can be a good trick for changing the saturation of your dust, I suppose, is what it's doing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Much like adding a lot of colouring or a little bit of the gel colours, just a wee bit there. And we can, of course, then start to play with the neighbours. So the violet pink, which I know for many of us is a firm favourite. And I've got some mega pink and even some bright magenta there. So the violet pink will look really cool on the purple. And if you think of it in terms of having your purple in the middle, so that's sort of our neutral starting point of purple, just how tremendously different it looks whether you are then dusting on top with more purple or dusting on top with those pinky tones. And this, it is a beautiful, makes them look like they're glowing is the best way to describe it. You know how a lot of flowers often are not one solid colour, and they're quite ethereal in their look. I suppose it's the closest we can get to that. And then of course there is nothing stopping you taking a little touch of something darker to just give that edge a little bit of definition and blending there. So that is very pretty. And again, we can do the same thing. I've got a million pots of colour and a million brushes. So a bit of cornflower with that violet pink there. If we wanted to have just a touch of pinkiness on our pale one. And you can see it just gives it an entirely different thing. And it's that subtle difference between And this, as you know, I always get funny about colour names because one person's idea of this is different than the other person's, etc. But if you think of all those sort of pale purple colours, from sort of lavenders and mauves and lilacs, all of those sorts of things, often you start with a pale purple base and then you bring through the pinkness or you bring through the blueness using the dust, if that makes sense, which always makes me very happy. On the pink front, I'm going to grab another, actually. So I'm going to add in another pink, which is this one here, which is the dusky pink. So that's from our vintage pink / burgundy. So again, so these are the magenta, these are from the vintage pink / burgundy, and it's the same deal. You can see the difference in colour that you get from using just a tiny bit or a lot of the colouring there. So I'm going to start with this one, just on the basis of, again, letting the dust do the work. So if we want super, super bright pink, I've got my nice magenta petal and I'm going to go over it with the mega pink colouring. And you can see you're just going to create the pinkest pink, basically. So you can get that super, super rich colour again, but without overdoing it in your paste. And with that, a touch of the neighbouring tone, which is that violet pink, and those little delicate brush strokes, and we can just give it a touch of definition on the edge. If we wanted our pink petal there to lean to the purple side of things, then we can use the violet pink. I can see Lee there saying about she loves the violet pink. It is also one of my all-time most favourite colours, I have to say. It's so versatile. It's very chameleon. It looks different depending on how and where you use it. So again, with that, that's your mega pink, that's your violet pink. Two completely different looks off the one petal as to whether you want it to just be very, very pink or you want that plummy, purpley leaning tone. And we can do the same again here with this lighter pink one, as to whether you go in for just a little bit of the mega pink. And actually, if I do some cornflower in there and make sure I do all of those little repetitive brush strokes to blend, you can see we have just, you know, to make the comparison the other way, both the colours there are the mega pink on the left hand side. Or if you want super pink again, we can do some of our bright magenta, but onto that lighter colour, and plenty of it, and it will come out very, very pink.
Very pink.
So we've been using sort of immediate neighbours. We can, of course, sort of take a little leap. So for this one, for example, we could jump over the violet pink and go in for a bit of pure purple, which again, just a little bit. Very blendy with those repetitive brush strokes. And you can just give it that more sort of purpley tone on the edge there.
It's like a glow.
This is it. I don't have another word for it. And then similarly, we can kind of go back the other way as well. And take, so this is the burnt orange, which is of course sitting the other side of our pinks. And that will also tone, you can see the difference there.
Yeah.
Tone with the pinks because it's going the other way around the circle, colour wheel. Which again, if we wanted, we could then tone in with just a little bit of the mega pink there. And that, as I said, you run out of words for it because we've made so many slightly different versions of pink. But it is what's fun about it. And then to go one step further, so these two, I'm going to have some new paper, and I'm just going to sort of move this up the way a bit.
There's room on the table.
So these two come from our burgundy, or vintage pink / burgundy. And of course, the thing here to think about is that if we want something to be vintage pink, we're still talking pink, but it's not these very, very bright pinks. So this is where the rosy pink and the soft pink, I'm going to need a slightly less coloured brush. So if we want super, super soft cornflower, add a little bit of the soft pink. And that we can use on that dusky pink petal there. And that would be it, to just accentuate those edges ever so slightly, as you can see. And it is just the softest sort of tone on tone colouring, which if we wanted then a bolder version, we can do the same on the other side, but we'll add in a little bit of the rosy pink. And do you know what the difference of these is, right? And if you watched our video last time, this will make sense. The difference between these two, the soft pink and the rosy pink, are pinks that come from being white mixed with red.
Mm-hmm.
These are pinks that come from being versions of magenta. And by that I mean magenta as in our primary colour magenta, so magenta, cyan and yellow. And it's the difference between, having pink that comes from no, I'm not putting them back on, even though I've already had one disaster today. It's pinks that come from that very bright pure magenta that is just the pinkest pink, as opposed to being a softened down diluted red, if that makes sense. So if you want the vintagey colours, you want the softened red, not something that's coming from the magenta, because then the big brothers to those are obviously your reds, and then I already had this one out, the burgundies, which will sit on those. Well, if we can sort of go around. So a bit of rosy pink on there, and you can see it doesn't do an awful lot because it's not darker, but we'll do a bit of our ruby red, like so. Or indeed, and this is one of my favourite ones to do, it's just the burgundy dust onto our vintage pink / burgundy paste. And you just get this gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous lush colour, like so. And then in terms of sort of toning these further, from our sort of reds position, if we want to go darker, we get to purple. And the purple, toned and brushed and blended, that's the word I'm looking for, blended. Like so, will give you a nice dark edge on that deep red there. I'm keeping an eye on the back of the bench, don't worry, as I'm just pushing them further away. So yeah, a little bit of purple will give you a nice tone alongside something that's very deep red, give you that nice sort of velvety look. And of course, from red, you can go the other way, which is round to the orange. So with our paler vintage pink one here, we've got that little bit of burnt orange, which, if we add that on top there, and actually I think I want a little bit more, but I'm going to do it with some cornflower so that I don't overdo it. We end up at that sort of, what do we want to call it, a sort of muted coral. It's not like bright coral, It's not peach.
It's like a light salmon.
But it is something in the middle there. You know, in terms of blending the pink and the orange to arrive at it instead of mixing it up from the scratch. Okay, what I'm going to do is, do you want to swap the camera for a second?
You actually need to start moving them away, not just pushing them away.
Well, no, what I'm going to do is just slide all the greens over that way. And then I can move the purples up the table. And then those are out of the way a little bit. So somebody asked there, sorry, I've lost it already, about if you can mix dust. You absolutely can. And to be honest, that is effectively what we're doing. It's just that we are mixing them on the petals as we blend them on. But I'll show you mixing a couple sort of on the paper. If you swap me again, we're sort of going all the way round here. So this one was red, and you can see, again, it is that thing of both these things are red. And there will be some circumstances where you want that sort of deep, muted red. Again, I run out of words, so I hope you know what I mean. From the burgundy, or indeed bright red from the red. And with your red, if you want something to be really red, so this is the postbox red, which I remember when we released it, we had a few folk being like, oh, they're not red where I live. It's like, well, they are in England. They are in the United Kingdom, the red postboxes. You can see it will very, very quickly, and they are the reddest red, like a London bus. You will get just that intensely red, which for something like this, again, tone it with its neighbours. So that little bit of burgundy, and it's always a bit of dust on the paper. Pick up just a smidgen. If you can see globs of dust on your brush, you've got too much. You want the dust worked into the bristles instead of on the bristles. And then...
Do you want to show the difference between having it in the bristles and...
Yeah, it is just, well, so you see what happens when I do it. Teaching folk that are new to it, and they'll sort of grab some and then do this. And you just end up, you're not in control, is the thing. Always what one's trying to do is maintain control so that you get exactly what colour you want in exactly the place that you want it. So red, which, this is the one bit, so the darker colours is where the like going either way round fails a little bit, because of course I'm going to put some orange on here and you'll see it will work to a point, but the orange is a less strong colour than the red. In much the same way, I'm sure you can understand it would be very difficult. I couldn't dust this yellow. Although you could conceivably put enough red dust onto a yellow petal to make it red. It doesn't work the other way around because they're just not so strong. But you can do it, and you can get, I don't know if this is going to show on the camera, but you know we were saying about things glowing?
Mm-hmm.
Does that show? Where I've got the orange on that half? Because it does. If
yeah.
it doesn't show, try it on something, because it does. It makes them look like they're blooming glowing.
Let me just zoom in a moment. I've got right in.
So yeah, with the, oh dear, this one suffered. So that bit at the bottom there is how it started off. That's postbox and just a touch of burgundy on the edge. But then on this side, I've put some bright orange on it, and it just, as I said, yeah, it makes it look like it's glowing. Actually, do you want to zoom out just a little bit, and we can stay there with it. So while we're on the oranges, I've got an orange one. So this one, in fact, I've got two orange ones. So this one was orange. So it was just that. Whereas this other one, oh, that lid's not on very well, hang on. Yeah. This one was the burnt orange. So it just has that slight pink tone built into it.
The very pale one is the burnt orange.
Very pale one's the burnt orange. And of course the obvious thing to do here, always, is to start off with the colour the way it is. So orange onto orange, which I'll do on this side, which we could then tone with a little bit of that postbox red and create a lovely looking thing just there. The other thing that we can do, of course, is to use some burnt orange and then some burgundy and perhaps a little touch of brown. So the orange and the bright red are your sort of pure colours that you're going to find on the wheel here. The burnt orange and the burgundy and a bit of brown are your across the wheel colours. So one tends to talk about across the wheel for the greens is the most obvious thing to get the khakis, etc. But it does apply to all the colours and having those slightly toned down ones. So if I do some burnt orange, again it's showing up here, I'm hoping it shows on the camera that straight away it's still bright, but it is just a tone down the peg. And then this here is a little bit of burgundy on the edge. And actually that now you can see it beautifully, of the difference between going brights, so the bright orange and the postbox red, or going for the muted tones, which is the burnt orange and the burgundy, which, you know, autumn wise, gorgeous. And we can add just a little hint of some brown onto that if you wanted to make it darker. Yeah, sorry. Oop. Because again, sort of orange, brown. Orange is probably like, so brown is all the colours mixed together essentially. It's all three primary colours mixed and you can get brown. Orange is probably the closest that you're going to get to that in terms of on its own and toning them. But that's kind of where all your autumn is, as well as then doing, starting off with a yellow base or a pale brown base and using all those colours. And again, all neighbours is the key, is that they're all neighbours on the colour wheel. With the burnt orange one, the thing that I love to do with this particular colour is put some pinks on. So this is my mega pink and cornflower combination, which goes on to that beautifully, which we can then equally add a little touch of our burnt orange and bring out the peachiness. And because this was a starting point of that burnt orange, but just very, very pale, you just get these gorgeous peachy tones. And one thing that's super, super nice with that, so we said the violet pink is a chameleon, so that's what this is here. If you have just a hint of that around the side, it will outline it nicely, for want of a better word. And as I said, chameleon colour, because you wouldn't think they both had the same violet pink on them. So yeah, that's something that's really nice to that. And don't forget to do your cornflower so that you are watering those down. So for yellows, this one is, or these two in fact, are from the yellow. This one's from the ivory gold, which is where you're going to find your creams and ivories and all the rest of it is there. And you can see, hopefully with these two, it's warmer, because yellow on its own, like a pure yellow, could be quite a cold colour. So the ivory gold is just a warmer tone of that. And this is somewhere that we could, if we wish, go to town quite some. So I've got some yellow. I don't need to open more colours. I think there's enough colours out. What do you think?
I don't know, because I'm mostly just looking at the screen. I can't see how many. You have got quite a lot.
So the yellow, same principle. We can make it even yellower with the dust. And indeed, we can use just a teeny tiny bit on there. So, you know, springtime on the way at the moment. that sort of paler yellow start with some bright yellow on it is very much your daffodils. In fact, those are your daffodil petals. That's your daffodil middle. So that is just with yellow. Or on the ivory gold with a bit of yellow. And actually that's a nice example where you can see the two, you know, it's about the same amount of bright yellow dust, and it is just how they're looking slightly different because you've got those different bases. And this is where we can properly go to town with, we can have a bit of orange. Again, it's those repetitive brush strokes bringing it in. On this one we could maybe do just a touch, and we can follow that up with some postbox red, and then follow that up with a little bit of burgundy. And the thing there is that it's the repetitive brush strokes, and I know I keep banging on about it, but it's absolutely the key that gives you that entire gradient from yellow to red, basically. So we've got all the way around the wheel with that. With the paler ones, you can do the same thing, but you just want to keep it lighter, I would say. We did say about if you wanted to, where am I? So if you wanted something the other way, if you wanted really, really bright foliage, you started off with a yellow petal, and that there is the tangy green on it. You can see, as opposed to starting with an olive green petal, hang on, let me move these, we can actually see them. Many things on my desk. Tangy green dust.
The one on the right looks a bit like a mango colour.
This one or this one? It does look like a mango, actually, yeah. You're correct. Yeah, just it's the combination of the dust and the base colour of the flower paste. So both of those there with the tangy green. And then with your ivory gold, if you want to keep things pure and light and sort of pastel rather than anything else, then just that little touch of the yellow, or indeed you can go for, so we've got some soft yellow, and you can see it's much warmer colour. So a little bit of that, like so. And then if you wanted to have a sort of vintagey-ness to your cream, that's a little bit of yellow ochre, but I only want a touch. So I'm going to mix that in with some cornflower, because again, like I say, it's all about control. And we can have just a little around there. So you can see if we sort of, again, 3 different versions of yellow, and it depends what you want, because these very bright ones are like daffodils screaming in the spring, right? Whereas this is more a rose or an old rose or something. Old rose, I mean like a open roses on a plant in your garden.
Oh yes,
old rose like that. Yeah, this is what we call them. You know, whereas that, and you've just got a much softer, more subtle effect of it, which again, if you wanted to, we can get a bit fancy. So I'm just taking a little bit of the rosy pink here. So, you know, we said about skipping a neighbour. So here we're going to go from yellow, we're going to go over orange and head towards some pinks. And a little touch of some pinky tones. If I got a less filthy brush, you will do. Let's have some soft pink. And again, you can get that kind of like what they called a peace rose. Oh yeah, primrose. Yeah, that's also true. Very much primrose. So we can do that. And then our last ones, and these are always my favourites, and I'm always so sad that there aren't as a person who mostly makes sugar flowers, there aren't that many calls for blues, and I'm always sad because blue is probably my favourite colour. I just really like blues. And we are getting a little bit close to the edge there.
You are.
So here we've got.
When we film the intro for this, there's going to be messed up everywhere.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, teal. These two are from the cyan, and then this one here, just I wanted to show you for sake of it being a sort of dusky blue, if you will. It's just a little bit of navy. So for all that one would usually use your navy colouring to make navy, you can also get a softer blue than this from having just a little bit of the navy. The teal, again, it makes me sad that there's not, but a little bit of your colouring is like perfect Tiffany blue. Which, of course, I had the teal out already. Did I? Did I?
It surprised me if you
it's
didn't.
Here. I hadn't took the lid off though. So what I've got here is some turquoise and some teal. I don't have, is a lot of blue brushes for obvious reasons. Which again, keep it soft. Tone it in, a little bit of turquoise there. And I'll pop a little bit on the edge, opposite side. And here we can add in some teal, which same colour family, much richer. And as I said, I wish there was some cause for doing all sorts of things. Like, it's just really pretty. So that's one that just works beautifully, tone on tone. It's nice, that dusky blue, isn't it? It's yeah, it is. It's nice. I had a bit of fabric that was neither blue nor purple, and it was exactly in the middle, and it was really nice. Here, of course, bluest blue, another colour I wish I had more opportunity to use. We can tone that on. And using the neighbours again, we can take a bit of our teal, which, I mean, not so much flowers, but think of that if you were doing something sea themed or whatever. Absolutely glorious. This paler one, I'm going to do a bit cornflower with my bluest blue. Again, just catching that edge there, as you can see. But we can go all the way around again. And in fact, have a little bit of purple into the mix there with that. And even, where's he gone, the violet pink. And this is also, so if you put your violet pink onto your blue, you arrive at a purple place. Let me pop some on this darker blue one as well. You get to purple, but it's a different kind of purple. And it's a purple with a different tone.
Hue?
Not hue is a really specific word in colour stuff. With this dusky one, so this is a bit of navy, and again, now I'll send Chris to the Shedley. Technically, it's going to come from somewhere over here.
Yes.
In terms of being cyan and a bit of purple. Himalayan poppies. They're gorgeous, aren't they?
Himalayan species discovered later were also placed into Myconopsis family.
There we go. But the duskiness, if we were mixing this from scratch, would come from just a touch, like the tiniest touch of orange in it, because again, it is that slightly muted tone. And with that, we can take some bluish blue to make it brighter, which, as you can see, ends up a different bright blue than our bluest blue onto our cyan. We can take some royal blue if we want it to be super, super, super royal blue. And plenty of it there. And actually, just to sort of prove the point, if I put some royal blue on here, oh, see that? See, that's why you shouldn't do it, because I'm waffling away, making a mess.
And now it is very blue.
Both of those are the royal blue dust, but you can see how different they look to the base colour. With this one, we can also go in for a little bit of our soft blue, and I love this colour, like so. So if you wanted some really sort of muted tones, you've got your pale navy paste, some soft blue there, and then we could in fact take just a little hint of navy, because there's some over here, which can give us our edges, or indeed again we can carry on around the wheel and have some purpliness, like so. And actually this is one as well where I'm going to go back to that ancient oak leaf, because the soft blue, a bit like the purple, is another one of those colours where if you're working out colours for stuff, especially if you're going pale, again, just how different that soft, sorry, so this is a riot, isn't it? Soft blue looks onto the white background instead of onto a blue background, because it just sort of lets the dust do its own thing. And there again, if you sort of mix in a little bit of purple, even a little bit of violet pink, that is sort of hydrangea-y tones. So yeah, most of the time, I'm sad you can't zoom out more just to illustrate the disaster.
I can on the camera.
Oh no, it's okay. Most of the time, as I said, what we're doing is finding the neighbours. We're finding a slightly darker tone to give it that shading and looking for the neighbours in terms of the colour wheel. I've run out of petals. Let's see, so we had the burgundy, the red, the paler burgundy, magenta, magenta, orange, burnt orange, yellow. That one was the ivory gold, so somewhere there's oh, this was the paler yellow one. Olive green, 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 eucalyptus, 2 of leaf green, teal, cyan, navy, and the purples. And the thing is, oh, that looks really pretty, doesn't it?
Maybe that could be the thumbnail.
Maybe that could be the thumbnail.
Or at least on the thumbnail.
The thing is that, so here and here, we've used the same dust. There's tangy green on both of those, but they look different. Each one of these has got some bluish blue and some royal blue on it, but they look different. The purple, where we've put violet pink onto cyan here, as opposed to putting pure purple onto purple there, again looks really different. And the pinks. So just have fun with it. And it would be, like I say, if I knew I wanted to make a peachy coloured flower, say, something peachy, pinky, whatever it is, I would probably make pale pink petal, a pale, that's the burnt orange, a pale yellow and an ivory gold, and then I would play with these 3 and see which dusts look the best on those, because they all come up subtly different. And it is that combination of dust on the paste and putting that effort and time, I suppose, into making sure that you've got the right combination. They do look like just really cool. Making sure that you've got that combination that just elevates your work and takes it from being good to like really good and stuff. And then, like we said, just keeping half an eye on your colour wheel and how it works. So if you had, like, where are we? So if we were doing this pink here, these bright pinks, I wouldn't use that green because they just look basic somehow. They're Crayola colours. Use that one because they set off each other so much nicer. Or use that one because then it's just a deep green and it's sitting there. That one would go if you wanted to soften it, because look how, let's say if you had something, you've got something green, we got something pink, something a bit paler pink, right? And it's just that bright, pretty bright, fairly basic. That one, because that there is your green and it's the olive green and it's got the leaf green colours on it, so it is green with those pinks mixed in across the wheel. Completely different look. That one there, darker colour, is going to make the pinks pop more. If you wanted to soften it all and you wanted something vintagey, go for that sort of eucalyptus green type thing. And so it's all, if you're joining us on Wednesday, there will be more of this. It's specific reference to the new class, but it is all, what am I trying to say? There isn't necessarily a right and a wrong. A lot of the time it comes down to what you like, how it looks. Oh, that was terrible English, but you know what I mean. But just play with it, because it is so, even just at the very most basic level of doing flowers, all of these are green. Every single one of those is going to look different next to each one of these flower colours, let's call it, and just play with it. Sorry. So I hope you enjoyed that tutorial there and playing with all the dust. As I said in the video, best thing you can do is go and experiment and just enjoy the process. Make a bit of mess along the way. It's nothing that can't be cleaned up. Enjoy it, and we will see you again very, very soon.